So, welcome, welcome all. This is the webinar is the workflow series webinar. This is actually a series that we're doing here, and today we're gonna be teaching, really focusing on sharpening, like I said earlier, sharpening your axe, making yourself more efficient with the tools you have, maybe learning some features and tools that you didn't realize were in there, or basically, expanding your toolbox. And with that, I do want to make sure everyone knows that we do have a giveaway today with the Wacom Intuos Pro Small. Will be given away in this webinar. But in order to be eligible, you have to engage. You have to ask questions in the Q&A, in the Q&A section, not the chat. So be aware that there is a Q&A section that you do need to engage with. Ask questions, and with those questions, you'll be entered to win the Intuos Pro Small. Only you do have to be in the United States or Canada to be eligible to win, so I do apologize for our international folks. And the winner will be announced via email in the coming days or soon to follow. Anyway, finally, we do have our best to answer some of your, wait, I'm supposed to read this. We have the best to answer some of your questions. We're talking about me and you, Kyle. I guess to some extent that's true. We do have some tenure here. So with that, I'm going to have Kyle go over the agenda, and then we'll do a little brief introduction and we'll get rolling. Kyle.
Absolutely. Thanks, Joe. Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining our webinar today. Just to do a quick introduction, my name is Kyle Runciman. I'm a product marketing manager at Wacom here on the biz dev development team. So focusing on media and entertainment, that type of thing. My background is industrial design, so I went to school for that. So I just wanted something that would allow me to draw for a living. That was sort of the goal from the get-go. I spent about 10 years in creative software. So I worked with a different company. So I worked with Joe for many years. I think I met you back in 2008 at a CES.
I think it was actually earlier than that, Kyle. I ran across some photos of even further back, like 2005.
Pretty wild. Yeah. So I've been using Wacom since then. So I was lucky enough to go straight from traditional onto a Cintiq. So I haven't spent a whole lot of time on Intuos, but then you're using the 21 UX, 22 HD, 27 QHD. And then I joined a year and a half ago, almost 2 years ago at Wacom. So now my whole office is just packed with all the different devices. So I'm pretty thankful for that. So Joe helped me transition into using the Wacom tablets more efficiently. So I did the first 10, 12 years using one specific application with 4 ExpressKeys set up. I never used my pen buttons. Touch strips were disabled. I just wasn't taking full advantage of these tablets. So what we wanted to cover today is all of the internal features that come with your tablet. If you're a user already, you have access to all of these things. But they don't really pop up in our marketing features. So we want to cover these things that exist, but we don't necessarily talk about them all that much. So that's a little bit of background on me, what we're going to cover. And yeah, Joe, he's been around for a long time at Wacom. He's one of the superstars at the company. But do you want to give a little bit of your background?
Sure. So yeah, I came to Wacom a little over 22 years ago. As a support supervisor, I came from a CAD background. I learned CAD and Photoshop, and Wacom decided they needed someone with those skills. And it's been a long, interesting ride since. I went through support, sales, technical sales, marketing. Now I'm in QA, of all places. So really taking all my interactions with the enterprise accounts and the studios, as well as, the graphic artists and illustrators, animators, photographers that I've worked with over the years, and bringing that kind of under the hood and trying to help making the future of our products just that much better. Earned the honor, I don't know if I earned the moniker Techman Joe. So some of you may have run across videos of me in the past. It's a misnomer in my opinion. I'm actually a lit major, but I've been doing the job of translating technical jargon to the average person so they can actually make the most of their tools. And that brings us back to what this video or what webinar is all about. So we are here to answer questions. We've got plenty of tenure. I've been a tablet only, pen only user for 20 years. I don't use a mouse. If I had my camera running, I'd hold up the one mouse I have, which I use now in QA because I have to kill my driver as part of my job. Um, I am not a fan of the mouse. So we can talk maybe a little later, Kyle, about the 3-day challenge, which is what I've always advocated for is a way to learn and understand that the pen it's not just an alternative tool, it is an alternative to the mouse. And you can replace your mouse with a more ergonomic tool. And that's my shtick. That's as far as I'm going to press that button today. And I will hand it back to Kyle because you have a lot to go over, and I will hopefully be answering questions. Once again, questions in the Q&A section get you entered in to win a Wacom Intuos Pro small tablet. So I will hand it back to you, Kyle.
Awesome. Thanks, Joe.
Absolutely.
So yeah, we touched on this a little bit in my intro. I guess I sort of bled into the actual presentation, but there are a number of features in your Wacom devices and in the driver specifically. So we're going to cover the 3 of those categories. And we sort of have broken this down into the value of real estate for each one of these. So that's going to be broken down into the pen side switches, or the barrel buttons, the pen buttons, whatever you want to call them, the Express keys or the Express key remote. Some tablets don't have the Express keys built in, like the Cintiq 24, 60 Pro 24, for instance, doesn't have Express keys. So you have the Express key remote. I don't know if that's coming through on camera, but we'll talk about that. And then on-screen controls, which is sort of an area that has existed for a while, but there's so much opportunity for you to expand even further than pen buttons and Express keys to really customize your workflows. It's really insane what you can do with that. If you spend a little bit of time working on it. So always accessible with the pen switches, your fingers right on top, super easy to get to. These are always for the most used actions. For me, it's undo and color picker and spacebar for the most part in digital sketching and painting. So spacebar is typically the default for moving your canvas around. Express keys. So I'm going to be using the Cintiq Pro 27. So I got my Express keys on either side, and the camera is really blown out. Sorry about that. And then underneath I have an Intuos Pro. So I switch between the tablets, depending on what I'm working on. So different pens for different tablets, but this is the best of the best, the all new Cintiq Pro 27, but that's as far as I'll get into for advertising. So when it comes to setting all this up, a little bit of upfront sort of time spent getting your key actions in place will save a lot of time in the long run, but it's always something that you have to sort of adjust and sort of evolve as you progress as an artist or in whatever your workflow is. My role in particular, I use a ton of different softwares. I have to make sure everything works properly. I have relationships with different ISVs. So it's critical that I'm using all types of things. So as much as I'd like to have everything locked in for workflow efficiency, I kind of get slacking in certain areas, but I have my favorites that I'm always adjusting and keeping everything up to date on. So the goal is, for me, maybe it's not the goal for everyone, but for me, I want to use my keyboard as little as possible. It's always on the desk, especially for naming files, that type of thing. But if I can keep my focus on the creative process, not taking my eyes off the artwork that I'm creating, and just have my Express key set up, my button set up, and then for tools that I'm not using so frequently, on-screen controls will pop up, and we'll get into that a little bit later. So pen buttons. Most of the pens that we offer come with 2 buttons. A couple that have 3. The new Cintiq or the Pro Pen 3 has a 3rd button, and there's a Pro Pen 3D, which is really nice. So that also has 3. But these are the ones that are always underneath your fingers and hugely valuable. Again, I don't know why I didn't use these buttons for 10 plus years. It's really a regret of mine now to be able to have an undo right there and a color picker right where I want it to go. You can also use that for like adjusting brush size. There's so many different things you can do with these buttons. Now, obviously, most of the Wacom users are aware of this, so we don't want to spend too much time on the actual pen side switches, but
You might be surprised, Kyle.
yeah,
You
I
are not
suppose so.
alone, man. You are not alone. You know, a lot of people buy the tool for one purpose and they get stuck in that rut. So that's why we got these people here, man.
Yeah, fair enough. And I just want to point out this, the second pen here, that's for the Wacom One. That one has only one button. So for a while, I struggled with which function to assign that pen specifically when I am using that device. And I figured out that the best assignment for that was to actually have a radio menu. So that one button allows you to access 8 different features, right? So when we get into the on-screen control section, that'll pop up a circular menu that you can pick and just with the tap on the segment that you want, and then you get your function that way. So you can have undo, spacebar, all those type of things. So this is what your tablet properties window looks like. Obviously, you can add, the most important thing about this is that in the application tray up here, you want to be adding your software so that when you make a change, it doesn't affect everything. So for all others, there's the default is all others. You're going to want to keep your buttons set to mouse buttons. So right click, middle click, I think are the defaults. So it's important to not overwrite those. I think that's pretty safe to say. Is that right, Joe?
What was the question again? Sorry.
Just to keep the all others set to mimic the mouse button. So the right click, middle click, leave those as is.
Honestly do. I do exactly that. I'll be the first to admit that I fell in love with the Pro Pen 3D. So I do. I have the right click. The tip is a click. The top is a right click, and I do use the pan scroll for the kind of middle button.
Okay.
But yeah, no, keeping the all other specific to your entire desktop is how you will be able to use the tool as an input device comprehensively. And then follow Kyle's instruction when it comes to your app specific settings. It'll change your life. First off, yeah. I'll before I wax poetic, I'm gonna hand it back to Kyle.
Yeah, so another thing, so what you can see here, I got 4 softwares, and there's more than in my, this is just a screenshot. So I got Clip Studio Paint is my go-to, Sketchbook Pro I've been using forever. Adobe Fresco is really nice, and Rebel 5 has some beautiful traditional tools. So I have all these different apps. One, because I have to use them for my job, but they're all amazing, and for different things. I'll jump into specific applications depending on what I want to do. However, I want to keep those workflows pretty consistent instead of having to guess or remember which application I'm using at that specific time. So my pen buttons are consistent throughout. Now, those shortcuts, the keyboard shortcuts might change depending on what the application is, but the function and the tool that I want to access is the same. So spacebar will bring up the canvas navigation for most of these. They work differently. Like Sketchbook has a puck that pops up the move and a zoom and a rotate canvas option. And then Alt for color picker in Photoshop is I in the letter I in Clip Studio Paint and Rebel 5, I believe. I don't know what they are. I've locked them into the shortcuts. So yeah, Alt for Clip Studio Paint and spacebar here, so that I can use my front finger to navigate and the back button to pick the color. So those 2 things, those I can count on those being always in the same place. And if there's a third button, undo.
Actually, you know, to your point, Kyle, one of the things I always make sure to tell people as far as the buttons, when you think about the pen, think about those keyboard events that correspond with something you're doing with the pen tip, and you know, really focus on those for your pen buttons. Just as a general rule, you know, like when your modifiers, your space bars, and things along those lines. You know, save the pen centric tools for your pen button.
Yeah, and also in 3D, you can see the Fusion 360 window that just pop up.
Yep.
Okay, so for this, you can assign different things for 3D navigation. So I have the front button set to toggle, and then middle mouse button does the move around, and then you can have pan and zoom at the end here, which is pretty nice. But so those things can be set. So in the driver itself, we can have So there's a navigation section here for the pen buttons. So that I have tumble for default for Fusion 360. And then Shift M is also the keyboard shortcut. So before I tried tumble, even though tumble is default for Fusion, I believe Shift M gives us the same option there. So different things for different workflows. So sketching and painting is a completely different button set versus 3D when I'm doing that type of, and then video editing is also another one where the buttons change depending on what I'm trying to do. So now we move on to ExpressKeys. So these ones are, I consider, very valuable as well, if we're still going to talk about this hierarchy of value, depending on pen buttons, ExpressKeys, and on-screen controls. I put this all the way up at the top as well, because these are my bread and butter. I had for Sketchbook, when I was using Sketchbook every day for a decade, it was spacebar, Shift, which got me straight lines, the letter B to adjust brush size. So you hold down B and drag left and right for your brush size, and then undo. Those are the 4 shortcuts I used. Every time I had to show up to a Wacom demo, those are the 4 things that I put in right away, and I was all set. That was the only the prep that I had to do, which was really nice. So assigning these key functions to reach with your non-dominant hand. Of course, there's two banks of ExpressKeys. There's a 4 on the right side here and 4 on the left of the Cintiq Pro 27. These are I use these ones for certain things like on-screen control, access, and display toggle. And then these ones are the ones I'm using more frequently. Display toggle is a hugely important feature that's been in every driver I've ever used, but never took advantage of until I took on the Intuos Pro. So if we were to, let me just switch over. So display toggle is something that stays locked in to this button here, my number 4 Express key on my Intuos Pro, and then my top right on my Cintiq, and then top right on my Express Key remote. So I know where the display toggle is at all times because it's so valuable. So by default, you're going to be able to reach all the way across both screens. So I have a Cintiq Pro 27, and I know I'm very lucky. I have a Cintiq Pro 24 here, so I can access both of my Cintiqs left and right with Intuos Pro. But if I wanted to start drawing with that, like I'm trying to draw a circle there, but that shows up as an ellipse. Hold on, maybe I should draw something you can actually see. How does that work? Can you see that there?
Yep. Yep.
Whoa, lost it. Photoshop. So I'm doing my best to draw a circle, and as an industrial designer, you train for many hours to draw a decent circle. So that's not a circle. So if I click display toggle, that's going to now lock my access to the cursor to this primary screen. Now, if I draw another circle, it's actually pretty decent. I think that's not too bad. Pretty good. Now, if I hit that one more time, it lets me control the cursor only on the secondary display. So you can cycle through. So both 1 and then 2. So that's really valuable. So if you're not taking advantage of display toggle in a multi-display setup, start immediately, because it really is nice, especially if you're looking to replace a mouse entirely, which I can't say the same as Joe. I keep one handy for more procedural functionality, emails and things like that. But it is what it is. I've tried. I can't let it go. But I have a whole bunch of pens at the ready at all times. So anyway, I'm rambling a little bit.
So there's an interesting question that Christian threw out. I figured, since you're talking about display toggle, it's a good time to bring this one up. Are the screen tablets like the Cintiqs able to function like an Intuos tablet? Like if I was running Blender and I want to use the screen tablet like an Intuos, can I just turn off the screen and use it as a flat on the table? There is a feature like that, but it's specific to certain pen displays. And I didn't mean to throw you off, Kyle. I actually thought the question was related to mapping, but this is actually using the Cintiq in not a screen mode. I believe the Cintiq Pro 16 has that feature, but to the best of my knowledge, it's the only one.
Is that right? I was wondering if there's like a USB-C connection and HDMI or DisplayPort, if you disconnected the display connection but kept your USB.
Yeah,
Does it function that way?
because of the device behaves that way, yes, that would also work. That's obviously you're having to jump through some hoops to make that happen, but it is technically still connected as a USB device at that point, and it maps to whatever displays are available. So sorry for disrupting you, but yeah,
no, not at all. That's a great question.
We have to ask. We have to answer the questions
afterwards
as well. So good question. And let's see. Does Wacom have a development community? I will answer that one. I'll let you go on with what you're doing, Kyle. I'm going to answer a few of these in the background.
Sure. So the one thing I want to just mention is the Express View. So that indicates the button mappings on the screen. So if I'm assuming, can you see this? I have to ask Joe again.
Yeah. Your Express View is showing up. Yep.
Okay, so that is really useful for when you're new or have a new mapping set up. So it allows you to see what you're hitting, just as a reminder. So once you're familiar with that, you can go into the Wacom tablets properties window and turn that off. Now I've hit display toggle and I have to redo my thing here. There we go. So that will be, if I'm in Tools Pro and I want to go to my ExpressKeys or functions, you have this little toggle here on the bottom left. So show Express View. So if you don't want that to pop up every time, that would work normally, but it's not working right now.
Nope. See? What's going on?
I think I have Windows Ink turned on.
Oh no. Well, and to be fair, doing a presentation is very different than working in, your creative applications. So you're probably jumping through some unusual hoops here.
Yeah, I got this creative software is up. So Photoshop, Clip Studio Paint, Fusion. I got OBS for my camera switcher, Zoom, and then Chrome open for speaker notes. So it's a lot of jumping around here, but I hope it's not too disjointed and seems like I know what I'm doing.
You're doing great. You're doing great.
Nice. So we're at 22 past the hour. So let's see what we can move on to ExpressKeys. So I guess we've talked about these already, and display toggle. Is there anything else that we should mention before moving on to on-screen controls?
Have you, pardon me, I was actually answering a couple questions.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No. When I say answering questions, when you were doing your presentation just a moment ago, I was slightly distracted by a couple of the questions that came in, some good ones in there. And in fact, maybe we can take a little break and answer some questions. But did you go through actually how to do a configuration or how to do a setup of an undo or
I have not, and that's something else that I'm probably taking for granted.
It's easy to do. And so those in the audience, please, if he glazes over something or does something that you want to know more about, I'm doing my best to keep an eye on the chat and the Q&A. But if there's something you want to see, the Q&A session at the end, we should be able to hit all of your questions. So if we appear to move on without answering, we will get to them.
Thanks, Joe.
Absolutely.
So this is the Wacom Center. So depending on the device that you have, you're going to have two different experiences. With the newer devices, handle most of the assignments directly in Wacom Center. For an older device like an Tools Pro, if I want to hit Express Key Settings, I'll double tap that. And that'll open up the older, more traditional Wacom tablet properties window. So by default, Tools Pro is functions, where the application list is here. It's highlighting all others. So if I wanted to change something in Photoshop, I wanted to scroll over and hit Photoshop. That way, anything I do only changes within the Photoshop window. And that when you're switching applications, this changes automatically in the background, which is super handy. If the application isn't assigned yet, you hit this plus icon on the right side and just scroll down and find your application. So we'll just hit PowerPoint here, and that'll add PowerPoint to the list. So anything I change here will only affect that control in PowerPoint. So for Photoshop, I have my top 2 buttons set up to the default on-screen controls that were built into the driver for Photoshop. So there's colorist, Photoshop drawing. There's a shift tab, and I cannot remember what that's for, but I'm assuming it's useful. Step backwards, and then I have my color picker, control, access to a radio menu, and a space. And this is, my kids may have gotten a hold of this one because that's not normal.
That's not my
top button
setting.
is supposed to be undo at all times, and this is supposed to be display toggle at all times. What is going on? Are they all like that? Undo display toggle. That's right. No, that's not right.
So actually, Kyle, this is a great time to answer one of the questions that came in earlier, which is someone did an upgrade to their tablet driver.
Mhm.
And is there a way to back up your settings?
Absolutely.
And that's a brilliant question, because if you're going to spend the time to go in here and and tweak all of your core applications and your even your all other applications, which is how it behaves on the desktop, it's really good to back up your settings. And there's really 2 ways to do it, but the way we're encouraging people to go now is through the Wacom Center.
Mhm.
And yep, there we go. And I got to move the chat pod so I can actually see what you're doing here. Under the advanced or the gear icon, I believe is where we hide this now.
That's right. Yep.
This is a new interface. So for those of you who have older tablets, or even some of the new tablets, this interface was designed for the launch of the Cintiq Pro 27. But it is kind of the interface that we're moving toward, kind of from this point forward, where all your settings will start to migrate into this interface, which is much more user friendly. But through that gear icon in the upper right, you'll see you can reset all settings. All right, hold on. I could have sworn that the backup was here, but I will. That's where it will be.
Yeah. Okay.
Actually,
Should have run through this beforehand, but
yeah, right. No, this is a feature that we are in the process of migrating over. So let's show you the old route. It's still there. We have the old control panel is going to be around for a while. So if you prefer that, you'll be able to go on using the Wacom tablet properties dialog. But with that, and pardon me for Kyle for making you jump through too many hoops, but if you could hit your Windows key and just type Wacom for me. The Wacom tablet preference file utility, because we wanted to give it a really short name, is actually what you'd use right now to do a backup and restore it. And this actually creates a file on your wherever you want to save it that has all of your settings in it. So at any point, you can uninstall, reinstall, delete. You can do anything you want, and you'll be able to back up your settings and restore them. And you can restore them through the same mechanism, or you can just find that file and double click it. And yeah, look at you go.
I learned something in our own webinar.
Well,
Not that I have never done this before, but I certainly don't do it enough.
No, it's all good. And I had thought that had already been put into the Wacom Center, and I know it's coming. But that is one of those things. That's the beauty of being in QA, folks, is I actually get to be on the front end. Unfortunately, sometimes that means I assume things are out when they're only in testing. So, and if I threw you off, Kyle, I do apologize. I figured that we had some questions in here related to ExpressKeys and some specifics that, since that's what you were covering, and before we moved on, I'd try and get those out there. Okay. Yeah, that was an answer for Esther that you had asked about backing up your Intuos Pro settings. That's how you do it for now. Once again, it will probably be under that gear icon moving forward. Christian, I believe if I didn't get to yours, function like an Intuos. That's the Cintiq question. I will drop something in the community. All right, here we go. This is what I was trying to get to, and this is, I think, in line with where you were going, Kyle, which is I have a Cintiq Pro 24 with ExpressKey remote, but the remote battery dies. I do want to touch on that.
Yep.
Is there a feature where the Express Key can pop up the Cintiq Pro display instead? And I think you were going to be talking about on-screen controls, were you not?
Yes. Yeah, that's
So
going to be directly after this slide. So the
perfect.
Express Key remote, one of the nice features about the Express Key remote, now correct me if I'm wrong, when the battery dies and you plug it in, you can still use it while it's plugged in.
That is true, but there was a physical update to these that was silently rolled out. And if you have one of the earlier ones, what's happening is the battery isn't dying, the device is going to sleep. The battery lasts for freaking ever. So you can have it plugged in and the thing will still turn off. And it turns off after like 5 minutes. But there's a little switch down at the bottom. If you just flick that little switch, it comes back on and it connects automatically. If you have one of the newer ones, you can just press one of the buttons and it automatically comes back on. So yeah, that was a silent update, but I wanted to make sure that was out there in the world.
That's awesome. Thanks, Joe.
Yeah, absolutely. And I will shut up and let you keep moving. And we have plenty of questions and answers to keep us busy for the last 20 minutes. So
okay.
right.
Yeah, so I'll try to not spend too much time on this, but it is important because it's a useful remote and it's useful for everything. Like you don't necessarily even need a Wacom tablet to take advantage of something like this. To have a handheld device and a keyboard just to run procedural workflows is pretty cool. Even if you're using a non-Wacom tablet, this is useful. So you can still use the same things. Now, I don't want to talk too much about that because we won't be using Wacom tablets, but that is an option. So you get 17 customizable keys, just like your Express Keys, and then you have the touch ring with 3 different modes. So depending on what you're using, I use this primarily for video editing, to be honest. So I use zooming in on my timeline, and then zooming into the actual preview, and then running through history. So making changes, that's my third. I don't use that all that much, but in creative, it's brush size left and right, and then undos, like scrolling all the way back if I want to make some serious changes. And then the third one would be a rotate canvas. So it carries a whole bunch of power. This is the touch rings are always the ones that I personally don't really use all that often because I have other ways of achieving the same results that I feel have more control. I think that's safe to say. But what I like about the way this is designed is that you have these different sort of designated groups for the buttons. So I know the middle 4 buttons are going to be my modifiers: Alt, Control, or Option, Shift, and then an undo. I have multiple undos all the time on the Express Key remote. But yeah, and then the indentations, the different shapes. So it lets you know where your thumb is without even breaking your concentration. So let's move into on-screen control. So this is where we can really get wild. Again, not something that I was even really aware of. I knew the radio menu was there because of mishits. It would be attached to Express Keys out of the box, and before I was able to remap, I would hit something and it would pop up and like, what the heck is that thing? And just close it and never really go back to it. But as I've tried to sort of streamline these workflows, especially in applications that I use frequently for generating artwork for marketing purpose or whatever, sometimes there's just not enough Express Keys for things that I want to be using. So I'll have to prioritize those top 4 workflows or actions for my Express Keys, and then I can pop up another one. So this here, CSP shortcuts, I have a copy, paste, save as, because you have to have an access to saving, because if it's not there in my face at all times, I will forget and then lose all my work, like I did with this PowerPoint deck this morning. Zooming out to your canvas so you can see 100%. I got merge layer, which I use frequently, so I don't have to go all the way over to the layer menu. And then I'll pop up Clip Studio Paint to show how I work with this. Yeah, and then you can assign a different radio menu to a grid panel, and then assign a grid panel to one of those pizza pie slices in the radio menu, and then you can just have access to infinite keyboard shortcut customization, and the opportunities are endless. So you have your panels up at the top, the radio menu, grid panels that you can adjust size and layout, and then keypads, so like a full calculator if you want to, or a number pad, not calculator, just a number pad. And then you can, so how many buttons is that? That's 4, 12, 24, 28. That's 28 hotkeys that you can just lock in, which is pretty nuts. And this is how you access that assignment. So in on-screen shortcuts underneath your tablet, you can pick the panels here. I may as well just open up the actual software instead of just talking about a screenshot. So on-screen shortcuts. If I want to, so this is my Clip Studio Paint shortcut list. I can make a duplicate of this and just call it webinar. I still have to look at my keyboard. Please don't make fun of me. And then you can click the same workflow for setting up ExpressKeys. I can do tablet navigation things, application specific, like action centers or OneNote. Anything between keystrokes. Generally, I spend all my time here in keystrokes and modifiers. So in the modifier, if I wanted to do left alt and middle click, now whatever button is assigned to that, when I click webinar, so if I go into, where do I want to be? Now to go back to the device and the ExpressKeys, I can assign, let's change transform to on-screen controls and then pick the webinar. So now that when I click this button with Clip Studio Paint, oh, that's Clip Studio Paint. So with Clip Studio Paint up, I'll hit, and it's not working. Webinar. Oh, I was hitting the wrong button. It absolutely did work. I just deleted the layer because I was hitting delete by mistake. So this is the grid panel that pops up when I hit that Express key. So if I hit it again, it'll go away. If I hit it once more, it will stay up. Now, what's really handy about these windows is that it has this nice little pin at the bottom. So you can just leave that there. So with Clip Studio Paint, I have the bigger buttons because I'm getting old and my eyes are going on me. And there's a nice little window here at the bottom of the brush properties that I find is a little bit empty in this application. So it's a perfect spot for me to lock in those keys.
Yeah, on-screen controls are kind of the catch-all that can be built for solving pretty much any problem. And you don't have to have a pen display to use them. You can actually bring up on-screen controls to just augment, like you've done here with Clip Studio, to just augment and expedite the tools of an application. And you can interact with them with your pen, you know, on a tablet, just like you would a pen or your fingers on a screen. They're really powerful tools that can be used for just about anything. Actually, Kyle, how much more do you have that you planned on demonstrating? Because we've got a ton of questions that I really want to make sure we get to. And sure. I think most of them will actually force you to do whatever it was you had planned on doing anyway. But what more did you actually have to do?
Aside from digging a little bit into on-screen shortcuts, it was just talking about those legacy features that we wanted to cover, just to make sure that we didn't leave anybody with extra questions. But I think that's not all that important.
Well, actually, I have a funny feeling those legacy features and some really good questions about simple how to use, how to hold, how to get the most out of the pen. Really, really basic. You know, what is it? What steps can I take to overcome the hurdles of migrating from a mouse to a pen? And these are really valuable questions and answers. As much as they may be, you know, obvious to some, you might be surprised that there are different approaches to even what you came up with as answers to these. So if it's cool with you, Kyle, I'd like to kind of run back to the top of the Q&A list. And out of respect for these people who threw questions in the Q&A session, let's knock some of these things down. You good?
Okay, sounds good to me.
All right, so I'm going to go ahead and read, and then we can talk about who's going to tackle. How's that?
Okay, sounds great.
So Janine, hello. Okay, for the obvious, is there a good quote unquote marriage that can be achieved between Wacom Intuo's current lineup and the illustration apps of AI, or I'm assuming that's Adobe Illustrator programs? Oh no, AI apps like Bard. I'm not sure I fully understand the question. Do you get where they're going on that one, Kyle?
To take full advantage of sketch-based AI
Oh,
programs.
what's the one we were working with that actually you can sketch and it turns it into something profoundly cool?
Viscom.
Viscom.
Viscom.io, I believe.
Yeah. So taking a rough idea and it turns it into a kind of takes your idea and bumps it quickly to the next level, and then you can use that to iterate. And that was like Kyle showed me that just a few months ago, and that's amazing. So I'm going to go ahead and mark that one as answered live. But if it doesn't answer your question, please just reiterate down at the bottom, throw another question in there, and we will get to these.
Is viscom.ai.
Viscom.ai.
Yeah.
And
so I hope this answers the question, but it is cool enough that I wanted to show it real fast.
And while you're showing it, unless you want to talk about it while you go, this is so wicked. So Don Kuno, pardon me for if I butchered your last name. What's the minimum size you need? This is a great question, and it goes unasked far too often. The right size for you is going to be determined on a number of things. What are you planning on doing? So for photography, you can get away with a small tablet because the precision that you're going for is absolutely there. You've got 8,000 lines per linear inch on a tablet. So, and unless you have like 4 monitors, because the tablet maps to your display area, the small would be great for you. But if you're going to do industrial design, you probably want to go bigger, because you've probably been trained from the shoulder, or at least from the elbow, to draw. And so what you do has a huge impact on which is the right product for you. The other major factors are your overall display area, because remember, the tablet maps to your complete display area by default, and then you can use display toggle to jump between. If you've got 3 huge displays, don't go with a small tablet. It'll drive you nuts. Really, the medium tablet is kind of like the one I would usually, kind of push everyone towards at first, because you really can't go wrong there. It fits. It's a nice compromise in real estate. But I actually use an Intuos Pro Medium with 3 4K displays, and it works great for me. The other factor, as odd as it might seem, that is so cool, Kyle.
Isn't it wild?
That's crazy. So that's AI taking Kyle's drawing, and now he's going to draw on top of it. Yeah, that's some crazy stuff. So the other factor that nobody thinks about, and it's funny because I say this because my wife, she's 5'1" on a big hair day, is the size of the individual who's using it. An Intuos Pro Small is from a proportionally larger to a small person than it is to a large person. So if you're, Wilt Chamberlain, you'd probably want to go with a bigger tablet, just because you can cover the whole thing with your wrist. And if you're really tiny or petite, then you can get a lot more out of a smaller tablet. So I realize that was a rather wordy answer, but it's a really good question, so it deserved the attention. Never owned a Wacom because of the cost. What separates us from the Huyans, XP pens, and others? Wow, that's so cool. All right, I'm gonna let you keep doing cool stuff. And do you want me to answer this one?
Sure.
Yeah. All right. So one of the questions is actually about using it in CAD and 3D applications. So pay attention to Kyle while I'm yammering. So what separates us from the competitors? The easiest answer there is 40 years of experience and 40 years of working with both Apple and Windows, as well as Linux. A lot of people don't realize we actually have a lot of play in the Linux community, but that's 40 years with the operating systems and 40 years with the app developers. We have had and have personal relationships with the product managers, the app developers, the QA team, the support team. When they make pen-based interfaces, they make them with Wacom in mind, and everyone else just benefits from it. So we have a direct kind of connection with support and with product management, you're going to see the best support actually for Wacom products in the softwares you choose. And that's kind of my short and easy answer. The other things, yes, you can look at the specs. Yes, we can talk about the pen performance. I do like to call out that 8,000 levels of pressure is not the same for everybody. 8,000 levels of pressure just means that it can count 8,000 times. The important thing is to remember what's the range of that pressure. If your pen goes from 1 gram to 150 grams of pressure, and it divides that 8,000 levels of pressure between that, that's far more nuanced than you'd have if you have 8,000 levels of pressure between 50 grams and 100 grams. So it's weird, it's math, it's hard to identify, but the real value is when you get your hands on it and feel the difference. It's nuance. It's all about nuance, and art and creativity is all about nuance. So hopefully that's enough of an answer. Yes, Wacom does have a development community. And I should know it because I'm in QA. It's dev.wacom.com, I believe. Let me tab over developers. If you go to developer-docs, in fact, here I'll paste this right in there because it's some really cool stuff to start with. But you'll have access to, I'm going to throw it in the chat. You'll have access to learn more about where Wacom is and what kind of things we're doing. There's a whole separate side of our company that's purely direct. Our directives are all about software. So yes, we are heavily engaged with our development partners. I have a medium Wacom Pro, and now I feel like I'm cutting off Kyle from talking. So I'm going to let Kyle answer this one. I have a medium Wacom Pro, but having trouble catching on the right key motion. So using the pen barrel, I'm guessing. I do wonder if it's my tablet or if there's something simple that we can cover in this webinar. Kyle, do you want to talk about how you hold your pen, and maybe I can talk about how I hold mine?
Sure. So I'll pull up the Pro Pen 2 for Intros. I keep my buttons. I guess it's easier to see. Is this in focus?
Yep.
So the silver,
I can see it.
I have my 2 buttons here. I keep them underneath my index finger. So I used to try to keep them between my thumb and my finger so that I wouldn't touch them. That was always my go-to. Now I've just rotated.
So you wouldn't touch them. It's quite specific.
Exactly. Yeah. At one point, I even took the buttons out. So I just have the gaping void.
You're breaking my soul.
I know. I'm sorry. But yeah, so I keep them underneath my index finger now. So sort of like an airbrush. So especially when I'm scooting around and I just want to pick out this yellow at the front of the pen, I can just turn my cursor into a color picker and then let go and then just start coloring in that color. Second one, so I just reach further back to get my space bar and then just move my canvas around. So that's a little bit laggy on the camera, but that's how I do it.
It's all good. And so this is really an important topic. This is right up there with the size of the tablet, because we make very personal devices and you need to make them your own. Mm-hmm. I have been like I said, a pen user for 20 years, and I live and breathe by this. It's my desktop input device. I actually put my pen buttons down here underneath my hand, not just so I don't accidentally hit them, but what I do is I can then push with my middle finger and it rotates the barrel, and I can easily get to all of the buttons with my thumb. The trick here is what works for how you hold a pen. For Kyle, I noticed he holds his pen a little bit further back than I do, so he can access these buttons with his index finger. I can't. It drives me nuts. Play with it, tweak it. Have it between your thumb and index finger, have it under your index finger, and have it rolled down underneath into the cavity underneath your hand, and see which ones work best for you. It's going to be a very personal thing. Make it personal. They'll be prying probably this exact pen from very cold, dead, arthritic fingers when all is said and done. I live and breathe by this thing. So make it your own.
Pro Pen 3 3D?
Yeah, Pro Pen 3D, man. I absolutely love it. It's my go-to. What's the difference between the Cintiq and the Intuos devices? I'm glad you're excited about the webinar. This is a simple but straightforward answer. Kyle, you want to since you've got them both showing right in front of you, the difference between the Cintiq and the Intuos Pro.
So the difference between Cintiq and Intuos Pro is pretty fundamental in that the Intuos Pro is an opaque tablet. So you're drawing down here and looking up at a device. So there is a hand-eye coordination factor that you don't really need to rely on with the Cintiq. So the Cintiq is a monitor that allows you to draw right on it. So I was just using the Pro Pen 2 on the Intuos Pro. I can still use that on the Cintiq Pro 27. So I can go in and add a new layer. And now I'm looking at exactly where my stylus is. And it's more of a natural feel. It's about as close to drawing on pen and paper as you can get. I do find that when I'm sketching, I draw differently on digital than I do on paper because I'm more aware of not making mistakes as much on paper. With undo, I can just go wild and just keep hitting undo until I get exactly the stroke I'm looking for. And when you're sketching and ideating, that's very valuable.
Yeah, the beauty of going digital in the first place is about iteration, but the fact that you can iterate individual strokes with a rapid access to undo with, through an express key or through a pen button is absolutely huge. It's there was something more I wanted to cover, but I think you nailed it with that one. The other thing to consider, and looking at what Kyle has going on here, it's the same desktop I have. I have an Intuos Pro and a Cintiq Pro for exactly the reason Kyle just said. He can use the pen between them. So I use my tablet to navigate my whole desktop, and I use the Cintiq for video editing. So I go immersive on the Cintiq with a pen on screen, and then I do all my navigation work with my pen on the tablet. So if you're looking for really the best, not trying to sell it, I'm just trying to say that it changed the efficiency of how I work with a computer, like by 30 to 40%, because I was no longer putting my pen down at all. I was always just pen in hand. I would go wherever it was that I needed to go, and I would be very efficient at doing it. The next question you're already doing for me. Thank you. How do I use it in CAD apps? So Kyle, speak to that if you wouldn't mind.
Yeah. So a lot of the CAD apps are sort of like a mouse replacement workflow. So I have my navigation controls attached to my pen buttons. So for like Fusion 360, which is what I have up here, is tumble up front and then scroll or just move, I guess, pan on the second button. And then I use, for the Pro Pen 2, I use the zoom control down here because it has more control than the zoom on the pen button. So that's how I use it. For key windows that I use in this application, I have an ExpressKey set up for materials, so I can pop that up in it, and then always undo and certain things. So I should be able to have more things locked into Fusion, but I don't, to be honest.
Yep.
Another one that works really well with the Cintiq is called Shaper 3D.
Oh yeah, brilliant.
So that was an application that was developed primarily for the iPad. Oh boy.
It's gonna make you watch the videos.
Last time I used it.
You just updated, didn't you? No,
I'm on a new computer, so pen and touch.
It's all good. While you're jumping through these hoops, I want to point out that Don said he used to use this pen tablet in 3D Max, and it made it all so easy. It really does. It changes everything. Once it's really about coming to terms with how the pen is different than a mouse, and once you overcome that, you've got it made. And in fact, that goes really to the question that Tyler asked, which is I love the idea of the 3-day challenge and using just your pen for full 3 days, but what do you do with your keyboard? And I will let you get back to your 3D stuff in Shaper. Are you gonna go down that path?
It's taking me through the whole workflow. So
yeah, don't
pop out the video.
You get it. I mean, the concept is exactly the same. You're replacing your mouse with a more precise device, and it's about learning how to hold the pen. So I really kind of want to address Tyler's question of the 3-day challenge. The best way to do it is put your mouse away and just use your pen for 3 days. But where do you put your keyboard depends on the tablet that you have, So I think you saw that Kyle's keyboard was right next to his Intuos Pro. So if you have an opaque tablet, it's all about ergonomics. And then Kyle, if you don't need to go back to your over the shoulder camera, but you put your keyboard pretty much off into the under and to the left. You're right-handed, right?
I am right-handed. Yeah. So I have my Intuos here and my keyboard here, and most of the time it's more centralized for typing because.
But you're doing a webinar, so.
Yeah. Well, and I'm,
Yeah.
When I'm in creative zone, it's the keyboard's there. So like when I do need to reach things that aren't assigned to ExpressKeys, I can still reach it.
Yep. Sorry, didn't mean to.
Nope, that's pretty much it. I was just trying to figure out how to end the sentence.
So but rather than Velcroing or taping them to your display, there's an accessory for the Cintiq Pro 27, but there's a company out there called CinTweak, and I did not make that up. It is CIN Tweak, and they make accessories for our products, and they're pretty cool. And they make keyboard trays and stuff like that you can use to arrange the keyboard. But Tyler, focus first and foremost on ergonomics. You do this 8 hours a day, you want to be able to survive your job. So yep. I'm going to move on from that one. Janine asked how to personalize the pen tip to get the best looking results from line or stroke. Now, most of that's done in the applications. So you change your brush settings in the applications, but Kyle, you've got up on screen exactly where we want to do that.
That's just a screenshot. So let me pull up the actual.
But yeah, no, yeah. The tip sensitivity is all about it.
So I'm holding my Intuos Pro, Intuos Pro on a Pro Pen 2. So you want to make sure you're grabbing your Pro Pen 2. When you're adjusting pen tip, I would do this under all other. So tip and feel so soft. The softer you now, I always leave mine dead center. Straight out of the box is exactly where I want to be. And let me just hold on. Oh boy, I want to keep interpretation. What is this?
Oh, did you mark up the document?
This card.
It's all good.
Oh, I'm losing my mind here. My brain is just farting.
Oh no! If it makes you feel better, Kyle, if you embrace it, it's a lot easier once you just let it go. Sorry. No, I'll tell you what. While you're you looks like you got it. This is my favorite part of the gig, guys. So by all means, keep the questions coming. I like to make sure that you get out of this what you came here for. So I'm going to go through all of these.
Okay, so I just want to have a scratch pad, and then how do I do this efficiently? Sorry. Okay, now we're good. Now we're good. So when you adjust your pen tip feel. So if we go all the way to soft, you have to. I'm barely touching the tablet, and I'm getting a very thick line here. So if I really hammer down, there's not much of a difference between a heavy pressure and a light pressure. So this is light, this is heavy, right? So I'll delete that layer.
There's nothing, yeah.
Crank that all the way up to firm, and it's going to be the opposite, where it's all going to be.
It's all going to be small strokes.
This is a light pressure on the pen, and this is a heavy pressure on the pen. So like I'm probably making a dent in the plastic.
But I've used the reference of, yep. I am heavy-handed. I know this is going to be a shocker. Most men are, and yet a lot of the female artists that I've talked to have much greater control at that lighter end. I don't know of many people who go all the way to either end, unless they just flat out don't like pressure sensitivity. But everything between like the one dot in is really just play with it. You'll find that setting that works best for you. And like what Kyle's brought up here is you can actually get really granular and define the curve yourself.
So yeah, I just hit the customize button underneath this slider here. So that opens up a window for pen feel. So you can adjust the curve of how that behaves. Now, I'm not going to get into the math of how this works, but there's a scratch pad right beside it. So you can get a feel for how the pen looks with heavy pressure and light pressure.
Nice demo. Thank you. I forgot about the try here box. So there's this one, Mark. I hate this question because there isn't really written versions of our video tutorials. So Mark asked if there was written versions for people who would prefer to read than consume through visuals. The best hybrid I could recommend, especially for photography and Photoshop and Lightroom, is check out Photoshop Cafe. Colin Smith does a really good job of doing blog versions as well as, he does video and write-ups, and he did a lot of our early, effectively our Wacom for Dummies DVDs for many generations of Photoshop and Lightroom. So that's kind of the best I can suggest at this stage of the game, but I will take that request back up the food chain and hopefully we can start. I know you can caption all of the videos.
Yep.
There's a closed captioning option within YouTube, but it's really not quite the same. I have a basic tablet, but would like to buy a more advanced pen. Unfortunately, the Pro line of products uses the Pro Pen technology, and the earlier, the more entry-level line of products currently use it's the same core technology, but it's different in how it responds or acts with the sensor. So those pens aren't interchangeable. There really isn't much more to say on that one. It's just they are specific to the product line. So if you buy something that has Pro nomenclature or the Cintiq line, all of the Pro Pen 2 technology or Pro Pen 3 technology moves forward. Otherwise, you pretty much do have to use the pens that come with it, or other consumer versions of pens, something that's of the same product line. So that is something that we have heard more than once and hopefully will resolve in the future, but that's currently the case. I'd love to upgrade in the future to a screen tablet because I think it would be easier. Yes, the hand-eye coordination is insanely easy. It's about learning how the pen influences the software. I have an Intuos Pro and I haven't been able to master the tablet screen coordination. Is there anything I can do? Now I get to talk about the 3-day challenge, Kyle.
Awesome.
You draw, you make me look good, and I'll talk about the 3-day challenge.
Okay, sounds good.
So the 3-day challenge is the answer to that question. You are so not alone. Many people pick up an opaque tablet. There's a learning curve to this. The pen displays do exactly what you think they're going to do, and your pen maps to the screen. That's also true of the tablets. The problem is you're working down here and looking up here. So the 3-day challenge is unplug your mouse and force yourself to understand that this is a tip, this is a click, a right click, and a double click as you move up the barrel, and just use it for everything. I encourage people to do things like solitaire, things that take double click, click, right click, and click and drag, and just get it done. 3 days. Once you understand the tablet maps to your display area and you have tools like Display Toggle, you can compress that down to about 1 day, but it becomes muscle memory. And once it's muscle memory, you never look back. And that's exactly what happened to me 21 years ago. So please take the 3-day challenge and then, shoot stuff in our social media channels to tell people how the 3-day challenge went for you, because it changes lives. I've had people say they've converted their entire offices over to it purely for ergonomic reasons, and the 3-day challenge is how they got there. So please just do it. Wow.
Fine, I'll do it.
Yeah, hey, you know what? This is funny, and I'm gonna bring up an old employee. It took me 3 years to convince Wes to do it.
Is that right?
And then he finally did it. He's like, fine. Okay. Using a Mobile Studio Pro for several years. Wonderful tool, versatile, but found that several pieces of crucial software, Storyboard Pro, cannot run on the Mobile Studio Pro from a processing standpoint. Been using the MSP input device. This is really specific, and I might have to answer this one on the side. Not a lot of people have the Mobile Studio Pro. Let me see mess. Yeah, I'm gonna have to come back to the Mobile Studio Pro question. It's lengthy and it talks about the processor capabilities. In fact, there's a video I think on our YouTube channel about how to optimize the Mobile Studio Pro to get the most out of it and make it most performant. I know that some applications will use the integrated Iris graphics card instead of the integrated P3200. Which makes a huge difference in how well it behaves in graphic applications. And you just have to go in and tell it to do that. So I will hopefully be able to get back to that one, but check out that video, please. Do you have any tips for getting comfortable with pen buttons? Always end up turning them off. This must have been earlier on. Tyler, hopefully we answered that one for you, but it's all about how you choose to hold the pen. And now that you've seen a few variants, hopefully you'll be able to play and find that variant that works best for you. My recommendation for anybody who's getting used to it is hide the pens from you at first, hide the pen buttons from yourself at first, and then, find a way to integrate them, whether that's here and, using your thumb, or here and using your index, or all the way under and rocking it into your thumb. One of them is almost certainly likely to work for you. Really depends on how far back you hold your pen. So index finger works great if you hold it back further. Thumb tends to work better if you clutch up on your pen.
Yeah, that's great advice.
Is there an eraser on any of these pens? Kyle?
Yes, the older ones, not older, but some of the, like the Pro Pen 2 that comes with the Intuos Pro has an eraser on the back. So you can, forgive this one doesn't have pressure activated with Windows Ink, but if I flip the pen around, I can just, never mind. Does this one work?
Is it? Oh,
Okay.
What layer are you on? You're on the background
know.
layer. So this is a good one. This is a good one to know. Just Photoshop specific. It erases to your background color or erases to your foreground color if you're on the background layer. If you're on any other layer, it erases to the layers below. What was that?
That's okay. I didn't know that because I don't use Photoshop for sketching all that often, to be honest.
No, this is I was actually certified in Photoshop for like 9 years. That one that took some getting used to. The question of, you've got a 2006 tablet, should you upgrade? The short answer is simply yes, because tablet drivers age out and tablets age out of the driver. If you're on a Mac, you won't be able to use old tablets because the operating system has forced us to move on in ways that make the drivers incompatible. With Windows, you still have the ability to go back a ways, but not all the way. So before it actually ages out and you can't use it, I would highly recommend getting current. The other option is, you say you have to download the driver, probably because you're getting an old message that says, tablet driver is not responding or tablet driver not found. And that is an erroneous message thrown, and really what that means is the tablet driver is simply not running or has crashed. And so you may be having other issues, but I would still get as current as you can with the driver, because we're constantly updating the driver to deal with changes to operating systems. So that is probably what's happening there. Recently downloaded Krita, but it does not show up on the application part of the Wacom tablet properties. How do I fix that? I'm assuming you have to add it in the list. And if Krita is running, not all applications show up as their installed name. You actually have to find the executable that launches Krita, and you can do that by looking at the shortcut, and it will tell you where the executable is, and then you can use the browse option, the browse button, rather than trying to find it in this list where you'll see how it user OOOBAR. You have no idea what program that is. But if you use the browse button, you can go and select that actual executable that the shortcut is referring to. Now I'm getting into the weeds here, so I feel like
we're 10 minutes over. I was having too much fun.
Oh, Kyle, you mentioned you
didn't
use any of the buttons of your pens for years. How long did it take you to get used to them?
I would say less than a week, and it's something that I'm continually. It's like ebbs and flows. So sometimes I just won't use them. I'll forget that they're assigned to my color picker, if I haven't been painting in a while. Like if I'm just using a black and white sketch, I'm not really using it all that much, because my second button is space, which is a canvas control, but I have multi-touch on the Cintiq, so I don't use it for that. So sometimes I use it a lot, sometimes I don't, but to be familiar with it took about a week.
Good answer. There you go.
The other thing we wanted to talk about, Joe, I know we talked about yesterday, is the turning off touch for everything but on-screen controls. So if you have,
Oh, brilliant. Yes.
so if you're drawing, this is a mishit right here. So this little guy was a palm rejection thing where it read my touch as my knuckle as a pen stroke. So if I don't want to have that as an option, I can turn off actually, I'll go into the Wacom Center and show you how to do that. Touch input is enabled only on grid panels and radio menus. So this is what I want. So that's called selective. How do I do that? Basic gestures. Well,
So
I know for a fact that we can do it in this one. So in touch.
Oh, it's not going to respond until you, yeah, there you go.
Yeah, sorry. So
No, it's all good.
Touch.
And you have to physically turn off touch on the screen in order to actually have that option.
Oh, is that why I can't get to it? Okay.
Yep.
So yeah, this disable touch input except for on-screen shortcuts is grayed out. When I toggle off touch on the back here, now I can disable for just that. So when I have my ExpressKeys up,
I learned that the hard way at an actual trade show, Kyle. So it's so someone was trying to show me, or someone wanted to see it, and I'm like, yeah. And then I actually went in and turned off touch, and it's like, found it.
So now I can't use my fingers to zoom the canvas, but I can still access my on-screen controls to flip canvas or use a big transform window. So the transform pops up, but I can't grab a corner. I got to use the pen for that.
And where that's really valuable is like we were talking about earlier, where you're not wanting touch to navigate your canvas. You're wanting touch to augment your workflow. Through building of tools, through all sorts of stuff. Like in Photoshop, for instance, you can actually have a button that's just the same as your R key, which gives you rotate. And now you can rotate with your pen rather than with, trying to use your fingers, which is, far less precise. Like I said, I go back to the 8,000 lines per inch versus, sausage fingers. Just calling out reality here. So there are a number of questions regarding how to learn these things. I cannot answer all of them. What I can emphasize, though, is please check out youtube.com/Wacom. There are tons of videos, both from Wacom and from pro artists and just people who are really engaged, teaching people how they use the products for various things and teaching people, about the ExpressKey remote and how to do setup. In fact, I did a video a few years back. It's still up there on exactly how to configure your ExpressKey remote. And I go back to, I can't state it enough. The settings are yours. The how-to is what I show.
Nice.
Right?
Yep. I like that.
I was wondering if there's any plans to compete against Apple by introducing a device like a portable Cintiq that can be. I can't talk about future product. Whether we are or are not, we don't look at the the iPad Pro as a competitive device. We look at it as another tool in the tool chest. Please remember that we work very closely with Apple, and in fact, we have we've done many things with Apple. Most people start their sketches on an iPad Pro and finish them on a Cintiq. That's just a reality. We may get out into that space. The reality is every Android device that has a pen is using Wacom's pen technology. So we already kind of have competition out there. We just don't have our name on it. So food for thought. And then, is your tech team able to help me with ExpressKey remote? That's the please visit youtube.com/Wacom. Are the sides interchangeable if your dominant hand is left-sided? Absolutely. Kyle, do you want to show that one real quick?
Yes.
So if you happen
So
to be
if I
left-handed,
have
yep.
Intuos Pro, I keep my Express keys on the left because I'm right-handed. So if you open up tablet properties, Intuos Pro. Sorry, we're thinking here. We got functions. Now we can options, right?
Actually, it's in mapping.
Mapping.
So for the Intuos
So-
Pro, you'd select the pen that you use. Most people only have one, but Kyle and I are spoiled. We each have like three. You'd select the pen you're working with, and then go to the mapping tab, and
Yep.
the orientation of your tablet.
So I'm using Pro Pen Slim at the moment. Mapping.
Yep. And then
Orientation at the
left.
top right here, we have Express Keys left. You switch that to Express Keys right.
And that's it.
Now you can swap your tablet like this. Switch your USB if you're so inclined. That'll pop back up. There we go. So now my Express Key layout has now changed. So that's the mapping is still the same, but it's on the right side. So
yep.
I guess it doesn't really. So undo would have been this button previously, and now it's just swapped. It's like a mirror image.
So John, Malney, sorry. Is there an advantage to using more than one pen during a drawing process?
Yes.
Kyle, go.
Yeah. So here's my makeup brush holder for all my Wacom pens. So different pens for different tablets, but I can jump between a Pro Pen Slim, which is one I really like, which is a thinner. I don't know if you can see this on the camera. So it's a thinner one, and I switch between the thicker, more traditional, out of the box Wacom pen and this because my pen hand, there's fatigue involved. If I'm holding the same pen for an 8-hour drawing session, I'm going to feel it, especially right like along the line of life or whatever you call it. That it really, I can feel a cramp coming on. So if I'm switching and altering the pen I'm using, I find that doesn't happen as frequently. So I use different pens all the time. Now, whatever's within reach is what I grab normally, but making that switch a couple times a day really helps, I find.
While you're on the topic, there's another question here about pen nibs.
Yep.
And what is the difference and why would you choose them?
So the difference is there's a felt tip and a plastic tip. Now, I really like both. I use plastic almost exclusively, but the pen tip, the felt really helps mimic a pencil on paper feel, I find. So there's more of a tooth to it combined with the Gorilla Glass on most of the displays and the surface of the Intuos tablet. So there's more of a friction that you pick up when you're drawing. I do find that with those, because like Joe, I'm heavy-handed, they don't last very long. So if I was to get used to my pen tips, I'd be ordering pen tips on a monthly basis, maybe, just because that's how heavy my hand is. The plastic tips, it takes a genuinely long time for me to notice that there's a flat spot and a sharp edge on the bottom end. So I find that the tips, they're pretty good at staying in place. They're not rotating with your pen. I don't know if you have the same observation there, Joe, with the tip rotating inside the pen itself, but maybe a couple times a month. The only times the times I swap pens out is when I'm doing a video showing how to do it. I don't really change them all that often.
I have changed my Pro Pen 3D, and like I said, I use this for everything I do. I've changed my nib once in like 3 years. Now, that said, I don't sketch. And so if you think about it in terms of friction, the tablet has more friction than the pen displays. So you'll wear through these nibs a little bit faster if you're sketching on a tablet.
Yeah.
But they don't wear out fast. And felt tips will wear out a little bit faster than the polymer tips that we've got. But some people really like the feel of that polymer tip. And actually that kind of plays into one of the other questions I was just looking at here, which is Ah, the look, all right, there's the feel, all right, friendly. Someone's looking for a user-friendly device for the teenage son who loves doing animation shorts. They've got an iPad, but they're wondering if the tablet's better or should they go with the Cintiq, which one is more affordable. So talking a little bit about the affordability, there's a learning curve that you on the tablet that you don't have with the Cintiq, but tablets are less expensive. Kyle,
That's
if you want
true.
to elaborate, you may throw out your 2 cents on that one as well.
Yeah, for me personally, I find that they're on a screen is much more comfortable for me personally. And sure, it's easy to say that when I have all these beautiful Cintiqs on my desk, but there are Wacom One is a really nice entry level tablet. I think it's I should know the price offhand, but I believe $400 US. And that gets you a nice little display, a 13-inch display, and this pen with one button. Really nice way to jump directly into the on-screen workflow. So that would be my recommendation.
All right, so we got to
wrap this up.
We got to wrap this up. There's so much to do here. Is it possible to buy back a copy is it all right, so let's try and be articulate here and read through these things intelligently. What's the difference between the one by Wacom and the Intuos? Which one's right for the amateur hobbyist? My statement on this one is durability. They're both good. At the end of the day, they're both really good. They're closely priced. You're gonna be happy with either of them if you don't choose to go straight to the Pro line. The Pro line is really designed for professionals, but that means anyone who's going to be using them for 4+ hours a day, I would just forego any of the entry-level products and go straight to a Pro. If it's truly just hobbyist and you're going to do it for a couple hours a day or 5 minutes a day, either of the Intuos or the One line will work great for you. Work to your price point. There are features that you get out of the Intuos that aren't there on the One, like the ExpressKeys and certain features within the driver. So it's going to be about whether or not you want to you're buying it for the pen or you're buying it for the pen and the additional features. Let's keep going. Holy cow, you guys are good. Lots of questions here. Is it possible to buy a backup copy of the Wacom installation and initial setup software on CD? No, we stopped doing CDs a long time ago, but the driver, if you uninstall, reinstall, you always get the first time user experience. And our website's always there for you to go out and visit. I actually appreciate that question. I can't use a CD because I don't have a CD player on my computer anymore. Questions. There's some comments in the Q&A, but let's see. When you're on the road sketching, do you reach for a regular tablet, iPad, phone device with pen, or do you use the tablet that shows what you're sketching right on screen? So basically, when you're on the road, Kyle, do you use an Intuos Pro or do you use a Cintiq or Mobile Studio Pro?
I travel with the Mobile Studio Pro. I feel like a plug saying that because I have access to all these things.
We are spoiled.
Yes, absolutely. That's a great word. Yeah, so that's what I carry.
If you travel a lot, seriously entertain the Mobile Studio Pro. I actually, if I'm only carrying my laptop, I have an Intuos Pro Small that always travels with my laptop. But if I'm doing photo editing or just any kind of photo retouching, video work, I take my Mobile Studio Pro. But I am spoiled. So if you're talking about what it is, you want to buy, think about what it is that you do. So I realize that's a bit of a pawn off, but it really is, what you do should dictate the tool that's in your bag. Would like to see a practical setup of the radial menu. You actually have a practical setup of the radial menu, don't you, Kyle?
I do. So if hold on, the tablet's windows closed. I'll try to do this really quick because we are significantly over time.
Yep.
I'll switch this to on-screen control. Sorry, what am I in? Let me just pick something that I'm using. Clip Studio Paint. Switch out my delete key for on-screen shortcuts to radio menu. Now on-screen shortcuts, I will select radio menu again. So this is the default is show desktop, save, keyboard stroke for paste, express menu, switch application, taking a screenshot, transform. So if I was to switch out switch application, I would just go, I'll switch out for an undo, and then this one for a redo. And now every time I hit, oh, I forget which button I mapped it to. This one. So now that radio menu is up and it will disappear once I hit undo. So if I click undo, it'll go away. If I bring that up again and position it somewhere where I want it to be and pin it, now I can hit save, it'll stay up. Undo will always be there. And then there's a save dialog. So it shows that it's working. Is that does that cover it, I think?
Yeah, that covers it great. Absolutely.
Awesome.
Are you a Mac or Windows user? I am both. Kyle, you used to be Mac, right? Or no, have you always been Windows?
Mostly Windows. My personal computer is a boat anchor of a MacBook Pro from 2011, but yeah, work is all Windows.
I know we have. I want to get to all of these, but we are way past our time limit.
Yeah, maybe we just do one more.
Let's see if I can find something that's going to be really relevant to everybody. I have an Intuos Pro tablet. If you have, oh, this is a good one. I like this one, Lisa. We're gonna credit yours with the last one for the show, and I will hang out and see if I can type answers to the rest of these because I feel obligated. If you have set up Photoshop and wanted to copy those settings to a new program, is there a simple way to copy and paste those settings? Kyle, I don't know if you know the answer to this one. Do you? I have a recommendation, but I'd love to hear what your thoughts are.
Yes, I do have a recommendation, and it is to write down what your all other. So, okay, let me just go back to here. If I'm making it settings for my ExpressKey remote. So my clicks are dragging right now. So if I want to have all other, I'm going to take note of what these are. I want to add. And if I go to, if I have my Sketchbook Pro things, I want to apply those shortcuts to all other. And then you can add all your creative software and it'll take the all other defaults from what I understand.
Exactly.
And then go back to all other and change back to, I mean, that's like a whole word salad I'm just spewing out at this point.
No, you nailed it. I'm gonna paraphrase if you don't mind. But
sure,
so
please.
What Kyle was showing was that any app you add to the application specific settings adopts the settings from all other. So your core or your base settings. So what you do is if you have kind of a constant that you want to apply to all of the applications, start with modifying the all other, change them to whatever it is you want to kind of use as your base, add those applications. And then when you're done, unless you want to hold on to those, you can always hit the default button at the bottom of that dialog and set the ExpressKey remote's all other to its default settings without changing the settings to all of the applications that you've configured. And I will linger, but we have to wrap up. Kyle, I'm exhausted.
This was fun, but yeah, I hope that was valuable for everyone who joined. Thank you everyone for taking time to spend your afternoon with us. This was a lot of fun, and thank you, Joe, for tagging along. This has been really fun hanging out.
You know, we both learn from each other on a regular basis. This has been a lot of fun. So thank you all for joining us. And with that, I think we must bid adieu.
Absolutely.
You guys take care.